right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is my second day of guest hosting for Mackenzie Peterson, who is out at the Schwab conference, hopefully selling lots of our ETFs, including our cannabis and psychedelics ETFs. It's in Denver, which is near you, Aaron, right?
It is. Yes, it is. Yeah. Gonna miss Mackenzie, but I'm excited to talk with you today, Noah.
Yeah, thanks for making time for us. I really appreciate it. We'll get right into it. You guys just reported some earnings. I think everyone's seeing the numbers, which are great. But tell me, what's the number that stands out for you the most from a positive perspective? And then maybe what's the number or metric that you look at and say, that's one we're going to really focus in on?
Yeah. I would say we reported a really solid quarter, 203 on the top line, which was flat versus the prior quarter. And I think you're starting to see some other companies report where there's been some pressure on the top line. So we were really happy that we could really maintain that top line performance. And I think what the underlying positive to this has been the wholesale. And our wholesale was up. We implemented an accounts receivable strategy last year where if people weren't paying, we started to cut accounts off. Well, when you cut accounts off, they're just going to go to your neighbor and buy product from them. And I think across the industry, you're starting to see more acceptance of, if you're not paying your bills, then we just can't sell you product. And so for the quarter, for our wholesale to be up, I think that was really positive. It shows a lot of the time and effort and work. We have a guy named Paul Chilidikis who has been here, since the beginning of the year, put in a strategy. And I think that's really, been beneficial to us. On the retail side, we were down, and I think, part of the pressure we felt in the quarter was pricing compression. We put some promotional activity in place and we quantified that as about a 3% margin impact in the quarter. So the number that sticks out where you're kind of like, was the 26% margins. But the good news is that we did put some of these programs in place. You're trying to attract new customers, which I think was really starting to take root. And, also in the quarter, we made the decision to pull forward a lot of investments that we're making into our footprint. And, you follow cannabis as closely as I do. And, you can't have a 5-year CapEx plan because that always gets blown up. And so a lot of times you have to kind of maneuver very nimbly. And if anybody knows George Arcos, he is not shy to make the tough decisions to invest in our footprint. Last year, we basically shut down our big facility in Florida on a kind of like a stepped approach to go from a single to a double stack tier. And what that did is that really solidified us as the number 2 player down in Florida. Well, we're starting to make similar decisions in other areas of our business. So I think the number that sticks out to me positively is the top line. SG&A was down. So we're managing through expenses a lot more. Our accounts receivable balance was down 15 million versus the prior year. So you can see that collection efforts are starting to resonate a lot better. And then the margin, like we've always been a margin leader. We guided to 30% in the quarter. It came in at 26%. So, obviously not happy to not, meet or beat that number, but it's not fundamental to the business. It was actions that we took in the quarter. And so what we did going forward is we guided 27 to 30% margins just to account for maybe some of that choppiness that we may see in the fourth quarter, really trying to set ourselves up for a big 26.
Nice. That sounds good. You mentioned retail and some challenges there. Sort of what's working and what's not working. I've got to imagine one of the biggest challenges you have is probably the rules are very different, sort of state by state and location by location. But just even from a traditional marketing perspective, what does work for you guys? Is it email? Is it social? Is it being in the stores and in person? What is it that works and what is it that you think you push more of to try to drive more retail?
I think it's yes, and yes, right? I mean, George built this business with a hospitality mindset. A lot of people who founded these companies in the early cannabis days, came from more of like a legal or a banking background. And George obviously has a lot of knowledge in those spaces, but he was an entrepreneur. He built businesses, he built restaurants, he built, real estate, and he knows that the customer experience is what drives, the lifeblood of our operations on the retail side. Even this conversation, you are going to judge me based on this conversation. It's not going to be the, probably the body of our work. And we know our customers are going to come in and they're going to judge our stores based on their customer experience. And so the music has to be right. The lighting has to be right. The flow has to be right. Where do you have the swag counter? Where, and what we're also starting to do too, is we launched kind of a newer style to this space. I mean, people have done bodega styles before, but we launched a couple test dispensaries in Arizona where people can actually touch the product. It's not just off an iPad. You can come in and grab, an eighth of banana muffin, or some pre-rolls, or some edibles, and so we're starting to listen to the customers more closely. And I think what you're seeing is when you have 158 dispensaries, as you said, every state operates differently, and every state has different rules and regs that you have to follow. But at the end of the day, customer service is the same in every state that you operate in. And so we're listening to our customers more, and it's actually resonating into our product categories. We just launched a product called Hyphen, which is a newer type of vape experience where you can customize it. And so you can either go heavier with the flavor, you can go lighter with the flavor, and it's very, very customizable. And we got that from a direct feedback from our consumer base. And so the good news is, you have 158 dispensaries. There's a lot of data that comes out of those dispensaries, and each state does operate differently, but we are listening. And I think it is, the emails and, staying persistent, but you also can't be annoying, right? Like, I mean, think about how many, you go to a certain website and you buy something, and all of a sudden you're getting 14 emails, and it's like, I'm never buying from this place again. So it has to be a balanced approach. You have to listen to your customers, but at the end of the day, the people who are spending money are the most important aspect of our business. And so we want to make sure that the experiences that they have are consistent, and really kind of we want to separate ourselves from everybody else when you walk into a Zen Leaf or a Move dispensary down in Florida.
Yeah, your emails look great. I'm on your email list, and so I've got a store not too far from me in Germantown. So I get, the emails are good, lots of sales going on. So I like it, and I've been to that store several times. It's a bit of a drive for me, but it's clean, it's nice, it's a good setup. It's a fantastic store, at least that you guys have near us. I don't remember. Do you guys have, and I should know this, but sort of a loyalty program? What do you guys do to kind of lock into the consumer a bit more?
We launched a program a few years ago called Cabbage Club, and it was a loyalty program where people, could be at different tier levels, and
That's right. I
you
remember that.
get like discounting, and you get first access to products and stuff like that. And we had we still do have a separate loyalty program, and most likely we'll kind of roll all up into the Cabbage Club. But you want to take care of your employees. I mean, think about it like like I'm a United Airlines guy, and if they take care of me, I will fly United no matter the cost.
Right.
Really. And so we have that understanding that if you take care of the customers, and especially the ones that spend a lot of money, you're like, let's give you different discounts, let's give you different product access and stuff like that. But yeah, we I think what we were all striving for in the early days. I mean, we all did our research in California, and there were some really cool stores on Sunset Boulevard, and felt like Apple stores and stuff like that. And again, due to certain limitations in states, you can't necessarily replicate that, but we're striving for those types of experiences where people come in and they're like, we feel like we're at like a really good store. We don't feel like we're at a medical clinic. And it's been an evolution, and we will continue to invest in our footprint. And that was part of what we did in the quarter. Like, we invested in our CPG facilities, more automation. We launched barrel rolled joints, which you can really pump out a lot of those. And in a very short amount of time,
and barrel rolled means it has sort of the cigarette form factor, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
It smokes clean. It smokes quicker. I think people have really resonated well to that. And so, you're investing in automation, but we're also investing in, as I said, things like the bodega, in the actual feel and look. Like, we have a guy who paints murals in a lot of our stores. And so, we're sending him around the country. So it's like, if you come visit Chicago, or if you go to, certain dispensaries in Pennsylvania, like, you're going to have like a similar feel, right? And I think that's where you look at companies like Starbucks. They do such a nice job of, is like, you're in a Starbucks, and when you get a coffee, like that product quality is pretty consistent. And I'm not saying we're going to be Starbucks, but I'm just saying it's like you want that consistent experience, and that's definitely what we're striving for. But it takes money, time, and effort, and I feel like we're in a really good pocket of time in the cannabis space to say, like, listen, like we want to have the highest margins in the space, and we have the pathway to get there, but we will invest in the business at this time and in this juncture because we know that opportunity exists right now.
Right. I like, sort of the focus on being something like a Starbucks, right? You have your own stores, you've got good product, and it's based on a commodity, right? That anyone can kind of grow and sell or consume on their own. So you've got to, and just like coffee, right? So you've got to give them a reason to come to your store, and some of it's the in-store experience, the ease, all of that. But obviously, it comes back to good quality product. So I think that's awesome.
And then I think you have to be fresh too, right? I mean, like we see, I mean, our strain catalog is massive, and you're constantly having to keep up with what the new hottest items are and the new trends, but you also have to nurture the products that built the company. And so flower is always going to be the top of the heap. And if you produce high quality flower, which, I mean, go look at our menus, you can see the percentages that we're pumping out. That's what we built this business on. And at the end of the day, you can put things in a pretty box, but if that quality of product's not there, then you're just going to be nothing in the space. And we're combining now really high quality packaging, really high quality marketing, and that product is meeting the expectations of what people would expect from those experiences.
Right. And I'll point out too, you guys are one of the early adopters in supporting Mission Green. And I think it was sort of the change component, right? Where it rounds up to donate. And for someone like me, right, like I'm probably not the person that's going to care about flavored vapes and dialing that up and down, but I know lots of people do. But whereas something like hearing that if I'm going to buy a premium product and a good product, that something is going to then help people, boy, that actually resonates with me as well. And all the loyalty stuff, because I'm with you, right? Once you do stick with someone and it sort of have that give and take from a consumer relationship, it really can build a long bond. I'm an American guy, and I'm with you. Like I'm going to fly them no matter what. The experience is going to be great. They're going to take care of me, all that. Like it's all those things matter, I guess, in retail.
Yeah,
right?
We really commend Weldon Angelos for pushing as hard as he does with Mission Green. I mean, we are tremendously respectful and appreciative of the communities that we operate in. And so, we do a lot of time and effort and work that doesn't get put in press releases because, I've always lived my life like, a good man does good things even when no one's looking. And I think us as a company, I think we've invested a lot in the communities because we're riding on the backs of a lot of people who haven't had as easy of a path as we have had. And we understand that we're in business because of the efforts that people have put in before us. And so for someone like Weldon and Mission Green and the Roundup program that we have in our dispensaries, it's the first step of what we can do to help. But obviously, I think there's a much bigger path that we could follow as well on that. But we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. So speaking of your numbers, speaking of retail, I guess, and wholesale, right? The thing I'm noticing across the board with earnings, and we've seen this for a few quarters now, and granted, there are plenty of challenges that speak to it, but I focusing on the growth, right? These need to be growth companies, and they need to have sort of double-digit growth levels. Really nobody in the space right now, for some obvious reasons, maybe some less obvious reasons. But from your perspective, what's the catalyst for growth? Is it simply legislative changes, or are there other things that are needed?
I think it's going to be a combination of things, right? I mean, the obvious is states flipping, right? Governor-elect Spanberger won the election. That was huge for Virginia. She talked in August about working with the assembly to, really start to work to get a tried and true adult use program in place for the Commonwealth. And we're one of 5 HSAs, 4 that are operational, and we're down in the Virginia Beach area, which is a huge vacation area, right? So you think about what rec could look like for us down there. Of Florida, I mean, my goodness, we hit 56% in the ballot last year, and that 4% will haunt us for years. But we can get, the irony of that too is that the 60% ballot initiative didn't even get 60%, but it passed by a little over 50, so you're like, well, what the hell is going on here? But the good news is that 56% of the people in Florida wanted it. And if we get moves at the federal level, which we'll touch on in a second, I think that's going to ease some of the concerns that some of these people have and could potentially get a program like Florida in place, which we've quantified for us at $300 to $450 million on the top line of additional revenue. Again, go look at the OMMU data. We are a strong number 2 player in that state. And so I think states like Florida, Virginia, PA, I mean, we have 108 dispensaries combined in those states alone. And so you think about what adult use flips in those states look like, it's massive. And so the federal level, right? I mean, I'm careful to push too hard because we want to let, this administration work through what they need to work through. But, for us, we remain very positive on, what the potential steps are going to look like at the federal level. And just being a normal business, like that's the irony. We're not asking for anything special. We want to be taxed appropriately. We've quantified our 280E taxes at like 80+ million a year. That going away is a growth driver for this industry. And just being a normal business, credit cards, basket sizes go up. Advertising, marketing, do we have a Super Bowl commercial? Who knows, right? But, just being a normal business is going to be, it could be a massive uptick for the space as well. But we also have to run the business efficiently. And I think that's what we're seeing too when you talk about taking care of your customers and making sure those experiences are on point. That's what we're doing is controlling the controllables. So from the retail perspective, the wholesale perspective, we're putting programs in place that are really starting to resonate because there's some low-hanging fruit that we can grab. And then from a capital markets perspective, we're positioning the company, and we're kind of an outlier right now because we just re-domesticated from BC to Nevada.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And so we're kind of aligning, we are aligning, our reporting operational structures. You can imagine NYSE and NASDAQ looking at a US-based company instead of a Canadian company. I read an article on Shopify, they're a Canadian-based company trading in the US, and they're having trouble getting onto the Russell 2000. So they're having to petition.
Interesting.
And so we meet regularly as an ELT group and say, listen, what can we do to best position the company? So we're on CBOE Canada. It's a senior exchange. We're now re-domesticated into Nevada. And so we're a US-based company. So I think that's going to help us align with the US capital markets, because the quicker we can get into there, I think the better, stock performance, using your stock as currency, could help kind of fuel the growth of the business. And then I would say finally, if you look at hemp regulations, right? Like we aren't anti-hemp by any means, but what we are is we want it to be regulated in the same form and fashion as cannabis. When you see THCA flower and 1,000 milligram edibles in gas stations, and the cannabis space gets blamed for a lot of these negative headlines you see where, psychosis or something along those lines. You're like, we've been regulated from seed to sale since inception. And so I think there is a component to this where if you start to regulate hemp more closely, I think that would be a positive for the cannabis space. But we also, listen, like there are companies that are playing around in the hemp space with beverages, and that's something that we've looked at and haven't pulled the trigger on. But I do think there's growth and new form factors as well as, what do international markets start to look like? So I think the story is here. It's just when you're so dependent on regulatory moves, you have to be patient and control what you can in this current time. And that's what I think we're doing a good job of. And we're going to continue to, really position ourselves for what we anticipate being a big 26. So.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, right? Ultimately, I'd rather see descheduling than rescheduling. But even with descheduling, I want to see testing and quality and age gating, right? So you really need some rules. It can't just be, lift the gates up and let everyone run. And so do you see an impact from intoxicating hemp? I guess the answer might be it's different depending on the states that you're in and what the rules and regs are in that state. But do you feel any impact in terms of growth and sales trying to compete with, companies that don't have all the restrictions you have?
Well, and it's like they're taxed differently. They can use credit cards.
Credit cards, right?
Yeah. When you started to see the hemp shops, the head shops start to open up, there was definitely an inflection point on top line. So what we faced as an industry was, normalization of markets, right? Like look at New Jersey, for instance. There was 13 adult use stores when, that program turned on. We were running massive amounts of dollars out of our, 3 dispensaries that we had open. And that market started to normalize. So you had normalization, you had pricing compression, and then you had the rise of hemp. And it's great that McConnell, wanted to scratch, the backs of his, tobacco farmer buddies and have them kind of get into a new arena. I think what they created, the government didn't even realize what was about to happen. And so, like, look at Texas, like Ohio, Texas, they're starting to put tighter restrictions on hemp. Texas quantified their hemp market at $2 to $4 billion. So again, if that was more heavily regulated, like the cannabis space, and again, Texas doesn't have a tried and true medical program, so it's very state dependent. The adult use and med states, I think, operate a little differently than in Texas. But think about even just a fraction of that going back through the legal channels of cannabis, and so it definitely has had an impact on us. And it's really hard to quantify because of how much of this product is actually showing up in gas stations and whatnot. And people want convenience. I want convenience, right? So it's like, to have to drive to, you say Germantown's a little bit of a ways away from you. If you had a gas station that's on the corner and had some product that you liked, I mean, you probably would sacrifice quality over convenience at times. And so I do think that's had an impact on the space. And it's something that, we do work with the government for them to understand kind of like what's at play here. Because I mean, look what happened in Minnesota. I mean, they passed that, hemp bill, and I think they look back on it immediately and were like, oh shit, what did we do? Like, and now you to unwind that, right? And so I think we're working better with regulators. I think people want to understand cannabis, I think more. And again, it's just going to take time.
And so what do you guys do at Verano, right? It's hard enough to run the business in the industry that you're in. I think there's sort of one central, I don't know if it's right to call it lobbying firm that I know a lot of the cannabis companies support. But what is it that you guys are doing, I guess, at a federal and a state level to try to drive those changes you're looking for?
I think we're being more proactive. I mean, we have been so reactive as an industry because I think the early days is we just thought, who's going to fight cannabis getting legalized? And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I saw a study that said pharma would be impacted by $7 to $9 billion. I used to work for a pharma company, and I can sure tell you that they're not going to want any revenue impact by legalizing cannabis. And the irony of the situation is that company I work for launched a product called Marinol, which is a synthetically derived version of cannabis for, here we go, cancer patients and pain management. We're like, everything that we can naturally do, like you're doing it through a synthetic version. But they just had lobbying power. And so as we've grown as an industry, I think what we've done a better job of is being more proactive, and we're working better together and playing better together in the sandbox. I think so many companies just wanted to put their flag in the ground and say, we did it. But as the industry as a whole, if the industry succeeds, we'll all succeed. And so I think we're doing a better job to be more proactive. We're spending lots of time in DC. We've built up our government affairs team. We actually have people who are based in DC. And then from the state level, you start to think about like what a gov-elect, individual like, Abigail Spanberger, like we were working with what that potential administration would look like to understand where their views and where their focuses are going to be. So, we're now spending dollars. I think we're playing better in the sandbox as an industry, and we're becoming more proactive and not as reactive, because that's what we've done since existence, is we've always tried to play catch up. And I think now we're actually doing a much better job being proactive. And you're muted, Noah.
Truth trouble here. Thank you. And so, that's what I was going to say is, I don't know that you want to be in the prediction business, right? I mean, for me, and I'm just guessing, I'm not nearly as close to it as you are, but I felt like with a new administration coming in, seemingly friendly to at least some progress, I thought, all right, this is not going to be the biggest priority for them, but I sort of always looked at it as I think I called it Q3, 4, 5 would be a reasonable time frame in which, if they were genuinely looking to move and everything sort of lines up, we could see some change. I feel like I'm starting to hear, rumblings that it could be before year end. Do you have a take. You may not want to be, on the record for a view from a time frame perspective, but do you have one you want to share?
Well, what I can guarantee you is I am wrong 10 out of 10 times. So, I mean, let's take that, into account here. But I think we've heard the same things. I
Yeah.
think, we're definitely hearing some positive momentum. And I think what happened too is, some news leaked. I think, the space is just so anxious to jump on any level of information that,
Right.
maybe we got a little over our skis in the summertime. And so what we're hearing is all the right things. I think this administration has always been very open to this. And
Mhm.
and so from a time frame perspective, it's really hard to quantify like when this could potentially happen, but we are hearing the same positive things coming out of DC. Now, what I will say is it's easy to get frustrated waiting for Schedule 3 to happen. I mean, every day I wake up and I go through my scans of, did something happen, or, are we, gaining momentum in any areas? But you think about where we were at 5 years ago compared to where we are at now. I mean, it is night and day difference. You have the highest level of the government now talking about cannabis, regardless of when they're going to pull the trigger or if they're going to pull the trigger. It is so far from where we were at. And you think about the things that we've had to go through, from COVID to the Ukraine war, SVIB, FTX, and even more recently with the Charlie Kirk assassination. You had some other issues with
Israel, Gaza, right? Oh, the whole thing. Yeah.
stuff and the government shutdown. So to still be relevant is a massive positive. And so you're like, don't stop fighting, keep getting up every day, keep doing your job, control what you can control. And when the government actually gets it across the finish line, or if they get it across the finish line, then it's just going to be off to the races. But you have to make sure that you're in a position to take advantage of that. And the way that we
Yep.
build our business is, no sale leasebacks. We wanted to be very nimble in the capital markets. And, so, we're operating as if nothing is going to happen, but we're still making moves that if something happens, that, we can be a first mover in a lot of areas.
All right, that sounds good. Well, so you've already mentioned a couple of things around this next sort of question. I wanted to sort of maybe talk about more of the fun stuff within the business, right? What's selling well? What new products are coming out? Are you seeing differences in terms of demographics or locations from a sales perspective? You mentioned the new, vape, which is interesting because it feels like almost a tech solution to the cannabis industry. What's working well in the stores?
I mean, I'll say right now, our hyphen product is off to the races, and so
Okay.
probably more information to come out on our Q4 as we're continuing to gather information. We launched the Extra Savvy, which is a 2 gram vape cart, which is selling like hotcakes.
Mhm.
And again, it's the pre-rolled barrel rolled joints are selling well. A lot of our
Nice.
brands are resonating extremely well in the markets that they're operating in. You look at like Ohio, we're in 80% of the shelves with our pre-rolls now. That market is starting to open up more. And then our flower. I mean, our flower always has been what we kind of hang our hat on at the end of the day. But we are absolutely leaning in on these new product categories, and again, listening to what the consumer wants. And it's the convenience of a lot of the items that we're putting into the market.
Well, you said the flower. I'm gonna, little product placement.
All right.
And you mentioned the one, right? It was banana muffins. And it's interesting that you talk about wholesale because, because the Zen Leaf store is a bit of a drive for me, and I've got what was formerly Columbia Care, now Cannabis, literally a few blocks from me. And so going in there, trying to find, the best quality that I can find. And boy, this has, been amazing. I've been using the new PAX dryer vaporizer with this, and smooth, very fresh, right? I just break up a flower at a time, leave the rest in the jar until I need the next one. And boy, it's been a fantastic product. I use it, mostly in the evenings to sort of, wind down a little bit. But whether it's vape or even pre-rolls that I've used in the past, and I probably was a bit more of a, I'd call it consumable or edibles guy. But that I felt just I didn't love the inconsistency of when you get the impact you were looking for. But man, this experience with, high quality flour, and then, in a device that, I think maybe helps you consume it a little bit easier. It's been fantastic. So kudos to you guys
Thank you.
on
Yeah,
this.
what we try to do, Noah, is, and we don't try to do this, we absolutely do this, is create an entry point for every type of consumer. And
Yep.
and so, We have edibles that are at the lower kind of potency range, but we add in adaptogens as our bits line. You want vape carts that, can kind of satisfy the needs of, from the entry level to the heavy consumer. Our Holy Union pre-rolls, I mean, that's the top quality product that we have. We have guap gummies, which are 25 and 50 milligrams, which personally would never touch because I would be high for about, a month. But, the market has called for those, and they sell. I mean, you can't keep them on the shelves. And so, cannabis can be very intimidating. And you and I were kind of talking about this before we got onto, the show here. I was never a cannabis user. So even later in life for me, working at a cannabis company, I needed to find my entry points. And so I think the space is doing a much better job of allowing people to understand these products and be very comfortable stepping in. It's not the Cheech and Chong where you're just, high 24 hours a day. I mean, you can be, and we have consumers that are, very much in that world, but you have people who want to fall asleep at night, people who just want to take the edge off, or people who now want to replace alcohol with something else when they're at a concert or something along those lines. And I think we're doing a much better job as an industry of allowing those entry points.
Yeah, I think it was the same way for sure. And I think the few times I might have done it in college, right? I think it's just not being, I don't know if it's knowledgeable or product, but it just hit hard and, zonked out. And I was like, I like, beer better. and but that changed over time, right? I mean, as I've aged, it's, you're incorporating some aspirin here and there for some knee pain. I've got a lot of knee pain, and even sometimes pain meds and things like that. And then it's like, I don't really want to take this stuff, as frequently as it feels like I need it. And, alcohol can help, but it has its negative ramifications. And I still absolutely enjoy wine, but I, sort of enjoy it far less, I guess, or it's the same thing. I'm upping the quality, but decreasing the quantity. But man, it just, it took a while, right, for me to kind of get around to this. And because I was also one where I didn't really want to grind flour and deal with that and roll, right? I'd just use a vape or an edible. But, between the device that, that I bought with packs and then just getting some good quality flour, it's, it sort of takes a while to kind of navigate through it to find what really works for you. But so far it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and we have a whole medically focused line called Avexia, and it's tinctures and balms and
yes,
capsules.
I think I've actually used the balms from that line, I believe,
and they're amazing. And I think when people start to understand, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't necessarily get into your bloodstream, and it's more of pain management, and you start to look at the potential positives of what THC in conjunction with other cannabinoids can start to do. This is where the research component is going to be so critical, because people do suffer. Every minute that the government takes to delay cannabis being more accepted at the federal level is another day that more and more people are suffering. And so that's what built this industry, was to help people. And this is a absolute medicine. And yes, there is a recreational component to this, but cannabis has been around for thousands of years, and people have used it to cure a lot of things and treat a lot of things. And so, that's the hope, is that, this gets done sooner rather than later. And would a company like Verano benefit? Absolutely. But also, thousands, millions of people could benefit from this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about Virginia earlier too, Virginia Beach, which is certainly great from a sort of a fun and social area. They have nice beaches down there, but that's also a heavy military area. So you'll see lots of current, military people, and lots of veterans, that live in and around that area. So you're going to be in a fantastic spot as access starts to increase. Fingers crossed within the state of Virginia. So that's fantastic. Well, so looking forward, next few quarters, what are you most excited about?
I'm most excited. First of all, I would say one of the big overhangs we had was the Vireo lawsuit.
And, that's right. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That came out very successful, I think, hopefully for both sides. But yeah,
we worked really well with the management team. We were really happy with the outcome here, which was $1 million, and a non-operational building that we transferred over to them. To get things in court in Canada can sometimes take time. And we both just wanted to focus on our business. And I can't speak for Vireo, but I'm sure they feel the same. It was in the press release, like, we can now just focus on the operations of the business. So I'm excited that that is behind us, because, when I have these types of conversations, we can just talk about the operations of the business now. And what I love is the strength of Verano. We've kind of had some choppiness in the margins this year. Last quarter, 2 quarters ago was 33%. We were 26% last quarter. So I'm excited about a lot of the things we're investing in and really showing kind of how that could resonate into the market. I'm excited to see what happens at the federal level, right? And if we could just be a normal business, it's a lot of fun. That's where I can actually really start earning my paycheck, because I grew up in U.S. capital markets, and to have to almost be in a fist fight every day is a little bit of a challenge. So I'm really excited about what that potential could look like. And then, as I said, as we evolve our product portfolio, as we evolve the customer experience, as we be, really position ahead of a Virginia, like, we would anticipate that, that program turning on next year. And then if Florida can pick up steam, like when you plan for these things and they start to take root and they start to resonate, it really gets exciting, where this can be a lot of fun. And it is fun. I mean, it takes a rare breed to want to work in this space, and trust me, sometimes I miss my khakis and my suit coats the old capital markets days. NYSE, the casual Friday was no tie, so now
Nice.
I had to find my good flannel to wear here for this podcast. But I think there's a lot of exciting things ahead of us, and we just have to remain patient, keep fighting, and just understand that this is going to help a lot of people, and the companies are going to be hyper successful, if we all can align and take advantage of these opportunities that present themselves. But a lot of exciting things ahead of us.
Fantastic. Well, obviously, we love having you in the portfolio. We appreciate you making time for us to tell more of your story to our audience. For everyone tuned in, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We appreciate the time you guys spend with us. Aaron, again, thank you again for making time.
Noah, thank you. This has been great. Miss Mackenzie, but maybe I'll go have a coffee with her down in Denver. But but yeah, let's make this regular. I enjoyed this conversation.
All right, that sounds good. Though, speaking of Mackenzie, if I don't get the closing of this correct, she is going to yell at me. So I think I'm ready. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Aaron. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.